Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Sedona boys soccer coach Simon Blom, who will talk about how he plans to grow the program with no JV team. We'll then be joined by Bradshaw Mountain swim coach Russell Morrison, who will break down his approach to preparing his team for a swim meet. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Prescott swim coach Bill Riviere, who will discuss how starting as an official influenced his coaching. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Prescott High School swim coach Bill Riviere. Coach Riviere, welcome onto the program.
Thank you. I appreciate you getting in contact with me and having me here.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk about your swim program. Let's start out a little bit about your origins, Coach. You started out like many coaches do, coaching their kids. You have two kids who went through Prescott High School, one who went through Chino Valley High School, but you started out as an official, which we'll talk a little bit about. But Coach, you've served a few roles with Prescott High School as an assistant. You also helped coach the Prescott swim team, which we'll talk about. You started out also helping coach at the YMCA swim team. So, I mean, like I mentioned, the opportunity comes up at Prescott High School. I mean, you had two girls who went through the program there at Prescott. Was that sort of like, hey, when this opportunity comes up, I'm going to jump onto it? What sort of made you go, this is the time for me to be a coach?
Well, when Bridget Bunch, who had started the program, she had been there, close to 15 years. It's hard to come back behind somebody that has been there so long and had such a storied career. And I worked for 4 years when my oldest and my middle daughter were swimming for. And, it came available, and I was already involved with the Prescott swim team. And I had lots of parents that wanted me to apply for the position. So I did. And I was lucky enough to be named the head coach.
As I mentioned, though, of course, you did start out as an official. You were an official for you started out as a stroke and turn official, and you have been a starter for the U.S. swimming team, for U.S. swimming since 2007. How has that impacted your coaching? Has it helped you at all starting out as an official? What sort of benefits have you seen?
Well, knowing the rules is very important. And that allowed me to understand, what the legal strokes were, what a stroke and turn was supposed to look like. Sometimes it's not a DQ, even if it's ugly. Okay. But it just kind of got me into the sport, understanding what needed to happen and what to look for. And so then I just kind of progressed from there, moved from stroke and turn into a starter, which is just another position on the deck. And then, I was doing that for our meet, or the Prescott swim team's meet that we do. And I can go into stroke and turn at any time.
Do you feel like maybe some other coaches, not anyone specifically, but maybe coaches starting out into, their coaching career should maybe try their hand at officiating before they go into their respective sport?
Absolutely. I mean, you're put under the gun when, some of these races are less than 30 seconds and you get one shot at looking at something. And if you don't know where to look or what you're looking for, then you have absolutely no idea if it was a legal stroke or a legal turn or what. So I think it had immense help for me, especially somebody that I didn't grow up into swimming. I grew up into sailing.
Right.
But I did a lot of swimming. My kids were swimmers. And so I knew a little bit, but then it just kind of impacted me where I then understood exactly what they should be doing and what is legal and what is not legal. And, and because things go so fast, it's amazing how much you see in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I bet so. And like you mentioned, you kind of get an idea as to see the game at a different, in a different scope. Like you mentioned, kind of what an illegal stroke looks like, or what a legal stroke looks like, or just sort of those small details that maybe a lot of coaches or even myself as a broadcaster don't necessarily think about when we're on the floor coaching or talking about the respective sport. Coach Riviere has also been a volunteer coach for the YMCA swim team. He was also an assistant coach for Prescott High School before obviously taking over the program at Prescott High School. Like we mentioned, he has two daughters who went through Prescott High School. One of them went through Chino. Can get the trifecta, Coach. Just one going to Chino Valley High School, a Cougar, and a sea of Badgers, but it's okay. But I'm curious, Coach, you are also very involved with the Prescott Swim Club. You're the head coach of the Prescott Swim Club. How does coaching that club team prepare you for the high school season?
Well, a lot of times it allows the kids to go from high school and then swim in the club so that they can swim all year round. Swimming, you lose about 1% for every day that you're not in the water.
Okay.
And so it doesn't take very long before they're out of shape and they start losing their stroke. Now, some of the parts of their stroke are still there, but, they're just not fine tuned. And so with the club and USA Swimming, they can compete. And that's vital for if you want to get, better and start competing on the state side, because all those kids are swimming club.
Do you see a lot of your high school swimmers participating with the club team as well?
I do. I get quite a few. I get a lot from Bradshaw. Okay. I get a lot from Prescott. And then, of course, I get age groupers that are not in high school yet. So you're kind of bringing them along. So, I get to see the kids, from when they start swimming to, when they're going to state or just going to, regionals or junior Olympics on the club side.
How interesting, Coach. You obviously coach at Prescott High School, and you get to see a little bit of the competition with Bradshaw Mountain on the opposite side, and a lot of their swimmers coming over to participate with you as well. I do ask, I'm curious. You've been coaching now this program for about 6 years. Of course, you do have previous coaching experience, as we mentioned. But how have you adjusted your coaching style throughout those years?
Well, it's always a culmination. Everybody is different. Everybody's stroke is different. Everybody has different problems. So you're constantly staying in tune with what's going on with, the Olympians and what they're doing and how they're doing it. But you're also trying to teach them the stroke. And a lot of times you find out what works, what doesn't work. Each person is different. So sometimes it's visual. Sometimes, you can just tell them. Sometimes it's, it's like hammering on a rock. You just keep hammering and hammer it. And then one day they have an epiphany and they've now got it. So you get a varied amount, and you're changing your coaching style depending on what problem you're dealing with or what type of people you're dealing with.
What are some of those problems, Coach? You talked about it. Some of those players do struggle with. What are some of those common issues that you find a lot of players struggling with that you have to kind of fix?
Well, with competitive swimming, everything is you want to go fast,
Right.
and you're wanting to cut that time. But you have kids that over rotate, and so they look at the ceiling or they look at the sky when they're breathing.
Okay.
Or they're crossing over with their hands on their midline, or breaststroke, they get their knees too far out of their body envelope.
Okay.
And so they create drag. Or, with fly, they kick from their knees and not kick from their hips. And so each stroke has their own problems, and a lot of problems are pervasive amongst a lot of kids, especially when they're learning. But then, they've come up with new ways. Every person comes up with a new way to solve the problem. And you're like, wow, that's a new one, but that's not going to work.
Yeah, no, I it's like any sport, Coach. Of course, the game of basketball is a lot different than it was 5 years ago. The game of football is completely different than it was 10 years ago. I can't imagine that swim is the exact same technique and form that we've seen when Michael Phelps was in the water, winning 8 gold medals that won Olympics, or even prior to that with somebody like you might have to. Is it Spitz? Mark Spitz?
Yeah, Mark Spitz.
I know some swim, Coach. I know a little bit.
I was looking back on a YouTube of Mark Spitz, and it was right out of the blocks. They don't do a track start. They did feet together and feet in the front, and they didn't do any underwaters. They just kind of hit the water, and then they were up swimming. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was old enough to see the 72 Olympics. I was 6. So, it was, it's not fresh in my mind.
Right.
But yeah, swimming has changed so much. There'll be people that will come through and something is legal according to the rules, and it's fast. And so then the minute somebody does it, then everybody starts doing it. And, just the advent of working the underwaters on, just about every stroke has really changed the swimming game, so to speak. And you have to teach it, because everybody is going to be doing it.
Again, we were speaking with Prescott High School swim coach Bill Riviere. Coach, getting back to last season, of course, COVID surrounded the entire swim year, but thankfully, the season was able to get underway. Of course, everybody was dealing with the same issues. On the boys' side, the Badgers last season finished 23rd at state as a team. Bryson Smith, Micah Butner, and Rome Bassett all set personal records at state last season. Who else can we see, Coach? You're returning a lot of these guys back for this season. But who else can we really see step up on the boys' side who might be an incoming freshman or was a freshman last year? Just anybody you're excited about.
Well, Joseph Epley, he's a senior. He started with the program, I believe, when he was a sophomore. And we were teaching him how to swim when he first started, competitive swim, not, he could swim. And, he's just worked and worked. Last year, he was really motivated with the 200 IM, and Rome Bassett was also in the 200 IM, and those two got locked into battle just about every week at every meet. And so he's come along. He's going to step up to be my backstroker in the medley. And he does the 100 back, and then he's going to do the 200 IM. So he's going to be a big one for us. Egan Smith is another one that just started with us last year as a junior, and now he's a senior. He's going to take over our 200 free and our 500 free. And you need those kind of swimmers that, are just willing to take on it's not really the long distance because, in club we do the 1650, which is the mile.
Okay.
But, it's distance for high school. And it's hard to get, kids to do the 500. And he's grabbed onto that one and has, really embraced it. And then I have a rising freshman, Heath Tinsley. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. Wow. And he's been swimming with me for a while at club. And so he's going to be coming up, and hopefully he can start to perform on the high school level, and maybe we can use him in some of the relays. And he kind of pretty much does everything, so he'll fill some holes for us, definitely.
Of course, if he doesn't get poached by the basketball team first, Coach. 6'6", he's about halfway down the lane at 6'6", Coach. Come on.
Yeah, we had freshman night, and we were right next to the basketball coach, and he was talking to him, and then the football coach was talking to him, and so he'd be all right if he went to basketball because that's winter, but swim is a fall sport, and I'd prefer that he didn't go and hurt himself in football. But that's just me, and I'm just being selfish like that.
Yeah, Coach Collette and Coach Stedman trying to jump on top of the 6'6" freshman over at Prescott High School. Again, we're speaking with Prescott. Again, we're speaking with Prescott High School swim coach Bill Riviere. Coach, on the girls' side, the girls had two relay teams and one individual, Emma Jarnigan. I might be messing up her last name. They all qualified for state. How'd they do at state? And how is the girls' side looking this year?
Well, at state, we qualified as the first alternate in the 200 medley, and we were the second alternate in the 400 free. It's kind of difficult, although because of COVID, you never knew what was going to happen if, right, a team was knocked out the day before the state meet, and then we would be in. We weren't in. No relays were bumped out. So we were there, and they had an issue with one of the teams, and so they allowed us to swim, and for the 200 medley, and so the girls got to swim in state. They came in 25th, which is where they were seated, but they got to swim and got some experience. And for sophomores, that's when you start getting on that type of stage, they need to have time in the water and racing against people and just being in the atmosphere, because it's way different than a regular dual meet or a tri meet. It's very similar to an invitational, but they're the best of the best in the state. And so, right, you want them to swim against the best.
Now, Coach, you talked about it a little bit beforehand, about, having to teach one of your incoming players how to competitively swim. Of course, they knew how to swim, but the competitive swim side. So before we go, I kind of wanted to ask you that technical question. How do you start that? How do you kind of approach teaching a new quote unquote swimmer how to competitively swim?
Well, a lot of it, depending on where they learned how to swim, if somebody taught them how to swim, or if they just picked it up on their own and they're moving around in the water. Just moving around in the water does not make you competitive. Okay. You might be competitive against, your little brother or your big brother. Or
I'm a real good Marco Polo player, Coach.
And so there's just certain things with the head position, with breathing, that you have to learn if you want to be a competitive swimmer.
Okay.
You got to keep your face in the water. You got to breathe into the water, because when you turn your head to breathe, it's all got to be going in, not going out and in.
Right.
Everything is a lot faster. Even just with flip turns alone, most kids don't learn flip turns.
Right.
And so you have to teach them how to come into the wall at full speed and what you're looking for and how to get turned around and punch that wall so that you don't spend time on the wall, because that's, the clock is unforgiving, it's still running. And so you got to teach them how to come in quick, where their hips need to be, where their feet need to be, where their head needs to be, and then how to come out and how to break out, from the underwaters to over the water, and do it smoothly. And then, with starts alone, kids, when they're at the pool, they don't learn how to do a start. They may learn how to dive in, but they may do a belly flop, and, that's not what you want.
No, that is not what you want at all. But I do want to thank Prescott High School swim coach Bill Riviere for coming onto the program to talk about his program. The Badgers will be in the pool very soon as we get started and hyped up for the beginning of the fall sports season. And it starts with swim, football, volleyball, and a whole lot more. We'll be covering that right here on Off the Bench. Coach Riviere, thank you very much for coming on the show and taking the time to talk about your program. Best of luck this year with your team.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Sedona High School boys soccer coach Simon Blom. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Sedona-Red High School boys soccer coach Simon Blom. Coach Blom, welcome onto the show.
Okay, thank you. But you can call me Sam.
All right, Sam. Well, welcome onto the show, Coach. We're happy to have you. I love the Sedona-Red gear that you're rocking right now. We've got a lot to talk about your Scorpions. First and foremost, the Scorpions finished the 2020 season 8-4-1. Got an opportunity to make the playoffs. Coach, how did 2020 go for you?
Really well. I was surprised. We had a very, very young team. We only lost 2 seniors, so I'm really excited about this year based on what we did last year. Have a lot of, like, the highest scoring player on our team was only 14.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those returners. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. It was like a great benchmark for the kids, and I've already talked to them. We had our first practice Wednesday, so they're looking forward to it, and so am I.
Well, let's talk about some of those returners you got, Coach. Like you mentioned, you had a freshman as your leading scorer. That would be Luis Beltran. He is now a sophomore coming back this season. You also return now senior Kevin Castaneda. 2 of your leading scorers come back this season. What do those 2 players bring to the table for this program?
Well, they've been with me since they were in 9th grade. Mm-hmm. You know, Kevin is a great midfielder. He's a quiet leader, and he passes great. He knows the game really well. Always looks for the right openings. There's some other players like Max Metzger. He's a junior now. He was one of my captains when he was a freshman.
Wow.
So he showed leadership then. He's coming back. Looking forward to the season. And his dad is my assistant coach.
Nice.
And so we've really worked together with these kids and really excited. And so, yeah.
You've got a lot to be excited about, Coach. You're returning a lot of the team. You're returning a lot of the team from last season. And in all honesty, you're looking at returning the same team next season, which we will talk about here in a little bit. But there was somebody on your roster that really kind of jumped out at me in the straight off the bat, and it's your goalie. Your goalie was a freshman coming in his first year playing at the varsity level. You go, hey, this guy could be our goalie. I want to ask you, when he stepped on the soccer field, what about you might have to correct me with the name, but Joan Diaz Rodriguez?
It's actually Juan.
Excuse me. Yes, excuse
me.
Okay. Different spelling, unfortunately. But Juan, he comes in as a freshman, and now, of course, he's a sophomore. But I mean, what did he do that kind of made you go, this is the guy for us?
Well, he was a bit apprehensive about being keeper, but at the same time, he had the height. He was like 6'2", and he's only 14. I said, look, I think you're going to be our goalie right from the beginning of the practices. Yeah. And he goes, oh, I haven't played goalie since I was on AYSO. I said, I know, but I think you're the guy. And then he got more and more confident every game we played. And even when he let a goal in, he didn't get down on himself. And the players on the team, kind of convinced him, like, you're going to do fine. We're going to win the game. Because when you lose as a team.
Right.
And I told him, I said, you're the last line of defense. So if it gets to you, that means the rest of the team let it slide. So you're not the only one to lose the game or get a goal, let a goal go in. And so as he got a little older and more confident, and as we moved forward, and he felt like he was part of the varsity team, he just got better and better, and he made honorable mention too in the region.
Well, I do want to, of course, pass off a congratulations to Luis Beltran, who did secure the high school's Golden Boot Award. That was given to him last season, the leading scorer for the high school for the boys team. So congratulations, Luis, if you happen to be listening. Like we mentioned, you'll get him back this season. Like I said, Coach, let's take it a different direction here. You said Juan coming back into the game of soccer, or at least into a new position. You mentioned he hadn't really been a goalie since youth soccer. How do you approach a kid? How do you teach a kid a new position or reacclimate them to a new position with, when they haven't been there for that long, or they haven't been playing that position for that long?
Right. So my assistant coach, Jason, he was a goalie in high school.
Okay.
So he's been working with him and worked with him last season and warmed him up before every game. He did warm up exercises with him. So he kind of, gave him the fine points of strategy, as well as stopping the ball, coming out when not to come out. So that's kind of how we got him prepared.
Coach, I do want to ask, as a non-soccer player myself, I've called the sport, I've watched the sport. What is some of that strategy with the goalie? Because as somebody who is a novice to the sport, I look at the goalie position and go, your main goal is to make sure the ball doesn't go in the thing behind you. Make sure it doesn't go into the net. Obviously, there is a lot more strategy to it. Can we talk a little bit about that strategy? Like you said, just kind of knowing when to come out, when to stay in. What are some of those things that you kind of emphasize to a younger goalie?
Yeah. So we have drills that teach him when to come in, when to come out, when to stay, when to help with the defense. But he's also got to be very vocal, because he can see the whole field, where really only the defenders can see the whole field. And when they're up at midfield, he's it. He's the camera in the backfield. So he's got to be vocal, loud, and take charge. He also has to call for the ball. Mm-hmm. Someone wants to kick it out. He has to say, I got it, or move up, guys, move up. And then most of the time, what we've been doing is starting our play from his position. He gives it to the fullbacks, then the midfield. We move it up that way. Because if he just kicks it to the midfield, it's a 50-50 ball.
Okay.
So our strategy is to let him start moving the ball forward. Yeah.
So let's maybe just a little comparison, Coach, before we move on to a completely different topic. Would you say that a goalie is more like a center fielder in soccer, or more like a catcher in soccer? Just in terms of importance.
Difficult to make that analogy. But
it was a stretch. I thought I'd throw it out there.
I guess you could throw it out there. I guess you could say the catcher is kind of like the keeper. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Again, we are speaking with Sedona-Red Rock High School boys soccer coach, Sam Blom. Coach, like I mentioned, you're returning back basically the same team this year, minus a couple seniors. They'll be coming back again next year. So probably by this time next year, we'll be talking about, hey, you return this course of young kids from last year going into this year. But I mean, what a privilege. I mean, it must be really good for your coaching strategy, or at least your preparation for the season, knowing that, you're not letting go of a lot of kids this year, and, you're going to be coming into next season with basically the same team. But I'd like to know, are there any newcomers? Are there any kids who have been who have been playing well that are going to be coming up this year? I know JV has been an issue for Sedona High School, which is an issue that's outside of the high school, but I do want to ask, like I mentioned, are there any players that we could see step up this year? Any new players? Any players who are getting more playing time this year?
Yes, there's one, an Isaac. He's a sophomore, and he was on the cross country team last year. And the cross country team practiced the same time we did.
Mm-hmm.
So he kept watching, and he's been a great addition. He's got good height and good skills. Everybody knows him. He's doing really well as a new player. And then I have 3 freshmen that have all signed up this week. And then I have a couple of players that are kind of on the fence whether they should join or not. But I think I have about 23 right now that are interested, and I'll be, evaluating all the players and then deciding in a couple of weeks who stays and who has to. I mean, I might keep a player, but they might not have a lot of playing time.
Of course.
So I'll explain. You can stay on the team, but you won't be playing as much. I had players last year that didn't start for the first few weeks, and then they were starters after the 3rd week.
Yeah, you really never know throughout the season. I mean, injuries could happen. Kids don't play at the same level as others. Maybe there's some kid who practices very well, and you give them an opportunity in the game, and they play well. As you know, Coach, I mean, anything can happen throughout the season. But I want to talk a little bit about those numbers. Like I mentioned, we talked a little bit before we started. The JV numbers are not there right now because of the size of the school. For those of you who don't know, Sedona High School is in the 2A. They're a lot smaller than your Mingus Unions or your Flagstaff, which are in the 4A, of course. So I want to talk a little bit, Coach, about that development. You do have a little bit of help that the middle school and the high school are now together. So you're getting a lot of kids coming up in the school, as a 6th grader and then going in obviously through high school. Is there now more of an emphasis at that middle school level within the school to go, this could be our JV program?
Yeah, we have a couple of strategies that we do with that. First, we have a back to school night on August 3rd. Mm-hmm. And I'll have a table there. Even though I don't need more players, I do want to promote the soccer. I'm bringing my photo album with all the pictures from last season. Right. So the kids that are asking me questions can actually see the photos that were taken by the Red Rock News. And also, we as we did last year, we also promoted the games, the scheduled games at the West Sedona School. Okay. So that those folks can, tell their students there's home games tonight. There's a home game come. And then we're also having the cheer squad be part of our home game.
Very nice.
So they'll be at every home game. And so that should really pump up the enthusiasm for the school.
It seems like, Coach, in a couple of ways, it seems like soccer has become the new football at Sedona High School in terms of the excitement on Friday nights or Thursday nights.
Yes.
And like you said, you guys are getting the cheerleading team involved as well. Like you usually see the cheerleaders on the side of the field for a football game, but unfortunately, Sedona High School no longer has football. So it seems like soccer might be the sport to slot in there, Coach.
Yes, Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights, I like it. Again, we were speaking with Sedona-Red Rock High School boys soccer coach Simon Blom. Coach Sam, 8-4-1 last year, like I mentioned, in 2020. You're entering your 4th year with the program. What long-term goals, or maybe even what just goals in general, do you have for the program going forward?
Well, besides having the kids have a really good experience,
right?
One of the things I really emphasize is grades with the kids. That this is the end all to high school. You're only in high school once. Let's work on your grades. I really try to get their respect in the beginning of the season. If they respect me, I respect them. I've never had a problem with any player.
That's good.
And I try to give them life skills. It isn't just about the sport. And we talk on the bus before the game, after the game, and to get a good relationship with them.
Yeah, and it's definitely important. Like you said, Coach, you like to have a good relationship with your players. Of course, there's a good balance to strike between being friendly and being a coach. You want to find that good middle ground of being approachable, yet still being an authoritative figure. Like you said, you have no issues with any other players, no issues at all. We just met, Coach, and I want to go play soccer for you. I'm terrible at soccer. I would be an absolute nightmare on the field, but it's the attitude that I think I really like. And a lot of the coaches, in fact, honestly, all of the coaches that I've spoke to on this show have a very similar mindset. It is just making sure that at the end of the day, these kids are having fun playing soccer for 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it may be. Like you said, it's just making sure that it's a good time.
Exactly.
And winning some games along the way, of course.
Yes. Yeah. And last year, my goal was to get to the playoffs.
Yes.
And we made it that far. Yes. Now my goal is we want to win the state.
Yes.
We want to be the state champions. And that hasn't happened in a long time in Sedona. And the kids are all excited. They're all on board. They get there early. They get on time. And so when 6 o'clock rolls around, they're ready to run, which they, of course, don't like to do. But got to get them in condition.
Unfortunately, I share that same disdain for running, Coach. I'm not much of a runner, which is why I played baseball and basketball, because there's not as much running. And my mom wouldn't let me play football, so I had to improvise. But Coach, I got one last question to you about the 2A Central Division. Chino Valley has been in the state championship for the past 3 seasons. Obviously, Payson had a turnaround year last year. Can we just talk a little bit about the competition, not only within the 2A Central, where the Scorpions play, Sedona High School, of course, but just 2A in general in terms of that competition that you see year in and year out?
Well, this is only our second season. So we've only played in that region 1 season. That was last year. So our experience is very limited, but Chino Valley looks like they'll be the team to beat again. They've lost a few players. We've lost a few players, but Payson's good. Camp Verde was good. We played them last year until the lights went out, and we ended in a draw 1-1. And so. Yeah, Payson's fun. We lost to them the first time, 6-4 in overtime. And then the second time we played them at their field, we were losing 2-0 at halftime, and we came back and won 3-2. So It's exciting. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, Coach, we're looking forward to and excited to see the Scorpions back out on the soccer field this year. Of course, like you mentioned, the team has only been in the 2A Central for about 2 seasons now. Only a handful of wins your first year, but a big-time jump this year. A lot of success going forward with this program. We look forward to seeing how these Scorpions end out the 2021 campaign. Coach, Red Rock, Sedona High School, boys soccer coach Simon Blom, or Coach Sam, as I should be referring to him as. But
my friends call me Sam, so you can call me Sam.
Well, I appreciate that, Coach. You can call me Phil. But Coach Sam, thank you very much for coming on to the show and talking about this program. We're very, like I said, we're excited to see what the Scorpions do this year in the 2A Central.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you, sir. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Bradshaw Mountain High School swim coach Russell Morrison right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Bradshaw Mountain High School swim coach Russell Morrison. Coach Morrison, welcome on to the show.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you. Obviously, first and foremost, congratulations on finishing the 2020 swim season. I know it was a nightmare with COVID, but the season is done. We are now moving into hopefully a normal 2021 swim season. Off season has kicked off, Coach, and you added a new assistant coach. So let's start with that. Let's talk a little bit about your new assistant coach and what was the focus this off season for you and your swim team.
We'll talk about the coach first. Well, here's the thing. I started this gig as assistant coach for 7 years under a very, very knowledgeable coach named Patty Eller.
Mhm.
This is now my 4th year as the head coach, and my new assistant coach is Patty Eller.
Oh, okay.
I asked her to come back. I said, Patty, I'll handle the head coach stuff, but I need that expertise at the pool. Can you help me out? And she's back on the team. I'm so happy. I'm thrilled. It's going to be amazing.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about that since we're going back a little. You talk about Coach Patty being, the former coach there. You're bringing her back in. Let's talk about your past as a coach. Like you mentioned, you started as the assistant. Now you've taken over the program for the past 4 seasons so far. You've been with the high school for about 11 years as teaching and swimming. Of course, like I mentioned, 4 years within that 11.
Yes.
But you yourself are a swimmer. You grew up as a swimmer. Let's just talk about how you got started as a coach in general. What sparked that interest?
It was something I always wanted to get into, but previously I'd worked at an elementary school. Clearly no team there. I worked at a girls' academy. There was no team there. And then I came to Bradshaw, and just as luck would have it, one of our first staff meetings, Ms. Patty Eller stood up and said, does anybody out there want to help me as an assistant coach? And man, just bells just started ringing in my head. So yeah, I just happened to luck into it. It was really, really fortunate.
How have you grown as a coach? I mean, like I mentioned, you've been an assistant for a little while. You're now kind of in your 4th year here. How have you grown as a coach, and what are some adjustments that you've made maybe in your coaching style or maybe in your off-season preparation? Just how have you grown these past 4 years taking over this program?
Well, I certainly realize there's a lot more behind the scenes than I realized there was, just as far as the paperwork and the forms and getting everybody signed up on time and getting the rooms for state. I asked Patty my first year, I had a kid going to state. I think it was, maybe mid-September, closer to October. I said, Patty, when did you usually get the rooms booked for state? August. Oh, okay then. I guess I should get on this.
Yeah.
But so little things like that you don't realize. As far as being around the pool, that's the same. Right. The kids are the kids. The stroke is the stroke. The instruction's the instruction. Always picking up new tips and stuff.
Of course.
But it was more the head coaching part of it that nobody sees. That I was like, oh wow, there's a lot more to this.
There's definitely a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I mean, even myself, I'm in a different profession. Obviously, I'm a sports broadcaster. You yourself are coaching a team, but there are so many like little details. A lot of people think that I just come on here and just start talking, or when we go to a game, we just come on and we just start talking about the game. There is so much preparation that nobody sees that goes in with all of our broadcasts, much of the same that I would feel that goes into your coaching style as well. You're not just showing up.
Oh, just go to the pool and swim, right?
Yeah. They're just swimming. It's not a big deal. Yeah, no, exactly. They're just swimming. It's no big deal. There's so much intricacies to swimming. And Coach Morrison, maybe you can help me out a little bit. There's a big significant difference between just learning to swim in general and learning to swim competitively. So I want to ask you, you're a swim coach, you're a former swimmer. How do you approach coaching a new swimmer? Again, somebody who knows how to swim, but is new to competitive swimming. How do you coach a new competitive swimmer? How do you approach that?
Well, you see a lot of the same basic mistakes across the board. Breathing mistakes, pull mistakes. They're not reaching, they're not finishing. So that's the basics. And that's why it's really essential to have an assistant coach, because we've always split it up where, like when I was under Patty, I did the basics with the new kids, kind of just got them into form. And then Patty would do the techniques, the real fine tuning stuff. So that was a great system. And in these past 3 years, we've switched. When I became the head coach, I did more of the technique stuff. My assistant coach did the basics. We'll see how it goes now that Patty's back. If I need to respectfully bow out and say, hey, you can take the varsity, that's fine with me. She's amazing.
Well, let's talk a little bit now here about the team itself, Coach. Like I mentioned, the Bears come in after a really weird 2020 season. They come back here in 2021. Let's start on the girls' side. Who are we looking at this year coming back? Any new faces? Where are we at with the girls' program?
Well, the season hasn't started. I'm not sure who new faces are going to show up. I've got a lot of interest from a lot of the 8th graders. We always reach out to Bradshaw Middle, to Glassford Middle, and try and pull. So we'll see. I've got a lot of names of interest. So I hope to pad out the girls' side because we don't have a whole lot of swimmers over there right now. We lost our number 1 last year, Shannon Moore, amazing swimmer, amazing student, amazing girl, moving off to college.
Yeah.
So we've got, but we've still got Mika Rapp, who's a huge force on the team, and she is our current captain. London Bonelli is coming back. Kelsey Gossick is coming back, both as 10th graders, and they both have a lot of potential. So I look forward to seeing where they're going this year.
Yeah, Coach, it seems like, there seems to be a running trend on, sports that have both sides of the program in terms of the male and the female side. I know that there are a couple of wrestling programs that have wanted to add more female wrestlers. They haven't been able to just yet. They're getting a lot more drummed interest, and a lot more people are coming out for the sport. Same thing with swimming. A lot more people are coming out to swim, a lot more people coming out for cross country. Like I mentioned, those sports that have that split between the two genders. But, it's hopefully, Coach, that this problem will solve itself. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of outreach at the lower levels. You guys are paying attention to seeing who's coming up and who's coming in. And hopefully this problem will start to solve itself. But let's go down to the.
Let me say, though, one of the issues last year, we did get to swim, but there were still people that were apprehensive because of COVID.
Right.
There were a couple of fantastic swimmers from the year previous who did not come back specifically for that reason. Right. I'd love to see those kids come back. So, yeah, I hope to see a rebound this year.
Yeah, and that's also a great point, too. Like you mentioned with COVID, there's some kids who just aren't as confident with at the time of the pandemic. You're 100% correct. But let's shift our focus here to the boys' side, Coach. You returned a good core of swimmers this year. What can you say to this crop of players as well?
Our boys' side has amazing depth this year. I'm very, very excited. Who do we have coming back? We've got Keenan Rivera, who's actually our sole senior, but he's an amazing swimmer. Has been with us all 4 years. His little brother's coming back as a 10th grader. Kyle Rivera, and that's double trouble, man. Those kids they're fast. We've got Jackson Dahl coming back as a junior. Riley Littman as a junior. We got Michael Monkey Goldsmith, as we call him affectionately. Yeah, he's a great kid. He's coming back.
Can we get a little background on the nickname, Coach?
It had to do with freshman year, and the boys were messing around in something they did, and just kind of the way it looked. And I was like, "Hey, I think I'm going to call you Monkey." He's like, "That's cool. I like nicknames." So, all right, so it stuck.
Very energetic. I get you. Okay.
He's just a fountain of positivity. He's a great kid. I'm glad to have him. Boy, homeschooler actually.
Oh, wow.
But swim pulls in a lot of homeschoolers, because I don't know if people out there know, but if you're homeschooled, you have every right. You're still paying your taxes to join public school sports.
Interesting.
So swim, I think, has become kind of known as a team that's, hey, this is nice, this is welcoming, this is cool for homeschoolers. So we get a lot of homeschoolers.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, so the boys program seems to be returning back. Like you mentioned, a lot of depth on that side. Good on you, Coach. You only graduating one senior this year. You're going to be returning the same core of guys back next year.
I know. We're looking for, I'm telling you, we have some amazing depth. Oh, I cannot forget to mention Garrett Barstead, Ethan Jolly. I'm sorry, Ethan Jolly coming back as a senior this year. Ethan, sorry, my friend. Been with us 4 years. Another real solid swimmer, always throwing down points in the meets. So we just amazing depth on the boys' side. I hope, if not, we might have some individuals going this year, but I'm thinking we got a good chance of a relay making it to state this year. So I'm very happy with that.
Very exciting, Coach. And hopefully we'll see that relay and a few other Bears in the state championship this year in the pool. Again, we were speaking with Bradshaw Mountain High School swim coach Russell Morrison. Coach, let's shift our focus here. A little earlier in the program, we got a chance to speak with Prescott swim coach Bill Riviere. As we all know, everybody, including myself, loves to hype up the rivalry between Prescott and Bradshaw. But as Coach Riviere alluded to me, a lot of Bradshaw Bears find their way to the Prescott Swim Club, where Coach Riviere is the head coach. And he even said in the interview, whenever there's a Bradshaw swimmer in the pool, he always roots for them. Kids who have gone through his program, he's a big fan of. There seems to be, and I'm guilty of it, is just hyping up the rivalry. There's a lot of crossover between these two schools that a lot of people don't know. Coach Bobby Yoder, who was the former girls basketball coach at Prescott, she went to Bradshaw Mountain High School. The new girls basketball coach, Jamie Johnson, she is a former Bear as well. They're both now over at Prescott. I want to ask, Coach, is there any collaboration between you and Coach Riviere? Like I mentioned, he is the head coach of the Prescott Swim Club.
Absolutely. With swim, there's not as much of a rivalry as there is with some of the other sports. We're very friendly. And yes, since we don't have a local club team here in Prescott Valley, some of my swimmers, when they can, they go to Bill's swim team over and Prescott swim team, and they swim all year round. I mean, I'm a special education teacher who happens to coach. Bill is a swim coach. It's what he does 100% of the year, and he's amazing at it. He's really, really good. So I'm always excited to send my swimmers over to him to pick up stuff that maybe I don't even know. So no, there's a lot of respect from both teams, particularly. But as far as collaboration, for instance, 2 years ago, we graduated a senior, Josh Bailey, who holds, I want to say, 6 out of the 8 individual records on our team. Wow. Amazing swimmer. I can't lay claim to that because he swam with Bill since he was a little kid. Right. So when it came to him, that kid preparing for states, I went to Bill and said, Bill, what do you think is best for this kid right now? And we got together and he gave me some tips. This is what I think he should be doing and whatnot. Right. Then when we had our end of the year celebration, I brought Bill by to say a little something about this kid who was graduating because I felt it was only appropriate. So there's a lot of respect, more respect than rivalry. Yeah. And
it's interesting, Coach. I mean, you talk about just collaboration in general. I mean, you're bringing back the woman that you replaced to come back and give you a hand as well. And even you talking about, you had that player getting ready for state and, you have a knowledge of the sport. You were a former swimmer. You've been coaching the program for so long, but you're still open to that collaboration with a rival school, with a quote unquote rival coach. Do you feel that there maybe should be some more collaboration between different schools and different coaches? I mean, not everybody knows everything,
Well, and that's the way I feel. That's the way I come to it. And I know I don't know everything, and I respect Bill's knowledge, knowledge of the sport. Right. I can't speak for other sports because I know it's a different vibe. Right. I could not imagine the Bradshaw head football coach going to the Prescott head football coach and saying, hey, what do you think about this? It's just not going to happen, Yes. So that's just a kind of a uniqueness of our sport. And some of the other sports are the same way. I think tennis, they're very friendly with their rivals. And they have that open communication. So whenever it can happen, there's nothing wrong with communicating, nothing wrong with learning more.
Yeah, I feel like it'll definitely be a cold day in a place below us if Coach Bob Young and Coach Cody Collette were collaborating on the football field. But let's talk a little bit
and chat.
Yeah. Let's. How about just like you mentioned, Coach? The sport of swimming is so different. Obviously there's the individual aspect and there's the team aspect as well, which I will ask you here in a second. But I want to ask about the preparation for a meet. Unlike football, unlike basketball, unlike volleyball, you're not preparing for just one opponent. A lot of the swim meets consist of 2, 3, 4, maybe, and obviously at state, 20 plus schools. Sure. How do you prepare your team for these meets when, you're not just keying in on one team?
Well, it depends on who we're swimming against. And if I know their swimmers, if they're returning swimmers, some of the same teams you see year after year, you're like, oh, that guy, he kicked our butt in fly last year, stuff like that. So then you really stack things as strong as you can. Gotcha. If I know they've got a really strong fly swimmer, well, then I'm going to throw my really strong fly swimmer in there. If we know we're up against a team that, let's say, we can handle, then I'll experiment a little more. Try my fly swimmer. He wants to try breaststroke. Sure, try breaststroke this meet. Try blah, 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 blah. So certain meets, we have that flexibility. Certain meets is, no, man, we have to swim every strongest swimmer in their strongest race, and that's just the way it is. Yeah.
What about, like I mentioned, the individual aspect of swimming? There's only so much of a team aspect when it comes to these individual sports like cross-country swim. How do you kind of, obviously you have to focus on individual players, but you still want to keep that team environment, that team aspect. How do you balance the two between going, hey, I got to focus on Russell's backstroke, but we're also getting up for the relay race coming up, and we got to make sure, nobody feels singled out. How do you kind of balance the two of the individual and the team aspects of swimming?
Well, on our team, we keep a strong, what I like to call a family atmosphere. Okay. We're very friendly. We're very inviting. Nobody gets too hyped up one way or the other about the final score. If we win, cool. If we don't, nobody's crying about it. We are focusing on the individual. And it's one of the great things that I love about swimming is I can bring in a new kid who might take him 50 seconds to do a 50 freestyle. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. That's their time. If you can drop it to 45, there will be swimmers at the end congratulating you for taking 5 seconds off of your time. Yeah. And we don't care you came in last. Right. So that's the family supportive atmosphere that my team has. We have fun. That's what we're there for. If it's not a fun experience, if it's not a learning experience, then what's the point?
Yeah, I totally agree. We got an opportunity to cover a swim meet for Mingus Union High School a little bit later during the season. And you're right. You see on the sidelines, not only are the parents screaming at the swimmers, but the other swimmers are screaming at the other swimmers in encouragement, of course. And you very much, like you said, it is a very family atmosphere around the pool where, okay, I didn't finish in first place in the breaststroke, but all my teammates were cheering me on. I got out of the pool. They said, great job. It really just builds up that family atmosphere even more.
It does. It's just one of the great things. You can disqualify in a race and, you don't have to worry, oh, I really let down the team. Yeah. Unless you should be thinking that, again, there will be people saying, don't worry about it. No big deal. You'll do better next time. And that's that family atmosphere. Yep. Yeah,
and just encouragement in general is of course great at this level here in high school. But Bradshaw Mountain High School swim coach Russell Morrison, the Bears will be back in the pool very, very soon as we get ready for the start of the fall season. Coach Morrison, congratulations again on finishing 2020. I hope 2021 is a little easier and hopefully a lot more successful. And thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate it.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'd like to thank my guests, Prescott swim coach Bill Riviere and Sedona-Red boys soccer coach Simon Blom, and of course, Coach Russell Morrison of Bradshaw Mountain Swim. We have got some more interviews for you coming up on next week's episode of Off the Bench. I'm Philip Catafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.